start just by having our new folks take 1 minute each to just tell a little bit about yourself. So, Paul, why don't you go first?
Thanks. Again, it's Paul Donnellan. I'm with Clario. We're a growth strategy and innovation consulting firm based in Chicago. So I gained 74 degrees coming here yesterday. Very happy about that. We work across sectors with different companies. We do work with startups, but most of our work with large corporations. We have a particular focus, though, with industrial companies and energy and natural resource companies. So, for example, I've worked with GE Aviation and Johnson Controls and Illinois Tool Works, among others, on innovation, everything from market focus to manufacturing. And I'm here to talk about a few insights we've had working with companies leveraging information in the production environment.
Okay, thank you. Sanjay.
So good evening. My name is Sanjay Kumar. I am part of Tata Consultancy Services. So we are a company which is into IT services as well as plant engineering and MES-related services. So I represent mostly the manufacturing industries, and for us that really means the automotive, aerospace, discrete manufacturing process. So that's where the bulk of our business comes from. Thanks.
Thank you. Dan.
Yep, Dan Miller, AT&T. So if you don't know who we are, apologies for that. So obviously on the business front, we provide global network services to about 80% of the Fortune 1000. On top of that, mobile solutions and mobile carrier services, the iPhones in everyone's pockets. And then we have advanced solutions on top of that, especially around the area of machine-to-machine and global SIM capabilities, and things that actually are helping manufacturers change their process by pushing information to them, allowing them to do more with less and be more nimble in their decision-making. So we're all about partnering up with our manufacturing customers and trying to understand their business problems and see if we have something on the shelf or a partner that they're not aware of to bring to the table and collaborate together.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So now what we'd like to do is get some questions from the audience. I'm sure you have a couple. If you just hold on, we've got a microphone. Come on, James, here, and then we can see where it goes. So we have a first question here.
Hi, Lee Richard.
Yes, please just announce your name and company name. Thank you.
Suzanne, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi. Lee Richards, Owens Corning. I have a question for Malik that's pretty impressive. I'm sure you could spend hours on that picture. Question around two questions. First is around the services bus. It sounds like you have an enterprise services bus and a manufacturing services bus as well. When you were integrating various vendor providers to the different solutions, how did they integrate into the bus? And are you providing true services in those in each of the buses? Is the first question. And then the second question is related more to the people side of things. You did this in about a year. How much, this sounds a strange question, but what percentage of time did you do video conferencing versus actually traveling and meeting together? And was there a relatively large amount of pressure with people being in the US and in Saudi to do video conferencing, and how effective was it? Would you have done anything different in that regard? Thanks.
Yeah. The first question, yeah, we do use services for the bus. We have a standard, basically an architecture standard that allows us to make the decision as to what goes through the bus versus what doesn't. And we had some interfaces that were already built in that we were leveraging, and that allowed us to kind of keep the puzzle a little bit manageable. The second question related to the video conferencing. Yeah, we've tweaked our project management methodology. So basically, the project was split up in a manner that they were like chunks, basically. So you had the set of requirements to solve the problem here. Here's what it needs to run the plant. We did the gap analysis as to what are the solutions that are already known and available that could be deployed versus where the gaps are. We call it a solution fit process. And that allows us to do a quick gap analysis. And then from there, we kind of can define the scope. We have 4 centers throughout the globe, and they're in different geographies. And we do a lot of the video conferencing or the WebEx, if you will. We do have a presence in Kingdom where necessary we would do a video conferencing, but we do have presence of some of our teams over there as well. So it depends. There's a spike in travel. Our teams go there routinely depending on the event, and if necessary, we would work their hours. We have certain teams that just work either their hours or our hours to kind of maximize the challenge of the time zones. But we've used all of it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and we improvise it based on what didn't work.
Okay, very good.
This is actually this question about video conferencing for us is a regular affair because most of our business happens in this mode where we have at least 2 to 3 sites across the world collaborating. And it's not just in this sphere, but in different spheres of the systems, the infrastructure, or even core product engineering. And just I wanted to bring the Internet of Things context in here because it's not only this dedicated video conferencing through Cisco or other technologies, but you're seeing a big, the coming in of the usage of the cloud. So using Skype and different, things that service providers are providing, Google Hangouts, it's really becoming much more cost-effective and really easy to do it. So cameras on the laptops, cameras on the tablets, that's all I think related back to the Internet of Things, and as well as what Jim mentioned, that how do we deploy all of this without having proprietary point-to-point connections.
Okay. Next question. Come on, I see some questions out there. All right, back in the back, James.
Great session so far. Brad Houck, ExxonMobil.
Can you hold it up, please? Just thanks.
Hello. Brad Houck with ExxonMobil. Question for Dow. Your chart looked really great. I wonder how much information would you be willing to share related to your vendor selections? So that's question 1. And question 2 is you talked a lot about scheduling, but you didn't talk about any optimization applications. Are you actually doing optimization within the facility from a manufacturing standpoint?
Yeah. For your first question, I'm not able to share the vendor who are making up the landscape, actually. So I had to try pretty hard to genericize it, and I think I did pretty good. I was worried about it. And in terms of optimization, yeah, there is a module that allows us to do that, and I think there is an intent to do that going forward. That was one of the challenges that I talked about in the IOM space.
Okay, thanks. So while we're thinking of other questions here, let me sort of change directions a little bit and see if we can go back to one of the themes that came up earlier in the conference. Because we were thinking about some of this new technology and what's the impact of the new millennial workforce, and how's that play with the Internet of Things and maybe with this whole idea of information-driven manufacturing. Maybe Dan, if you want to jump in on that one, and then anyone else.
Not that I'm one of the millennials, because I'm not. I'm actually a Gen Xer, but have adopted the technology requirement and addiction of a millennial, if you will. So I think that millennials think of themselves in a constant, always-on social network, and that pertains not just to their personal lives, but to business as well. So they're always looking for, give it to me, deliver it to me. I want it to be hand-delivered, and I want it to be on the latest technology and with contextual awareness. And so we're seeing kind of this drive towards virtual connectivity in all facets of life, kind of coming up through things like Google Glass and wearables. And I think what you'll see is the millennials and the younger generations will drive information consumption on a multitude of different form factors. I think today it's smartphones and tablets. Clearly we've seen an explosion of these devices that make it very easy to consume the information that was once data, was analyzed and put through a whole bunch of different tools to make it information. And it's going to get even, I think it's going to get more specific, where eventually you'll have things like a Google or a Galaxy Gear watch that will give you certain alerts based on where you are, what time of day it is, and you can respond to only certain pieces of it. And if you have Google Glass and you look around in a plant type environment, maybe in a safety glasses type of form factor, you can actually see how things are working with a virtual overlay, right? So think about a heads-up display based on where you are in the plant, what direction you're facing, what's supposed to be running in that process. I think the younger generations are driving what is a very slow industry to move forward. It's driving the manufacturing process industries to think about these technologies in a new way on driving better decision-making and more contextual, real-time awareness.
Okay, thanks. Paul?
And I think I would just add that when we talk to the HR organizations in large manufacturing company, there's always a challenge to recruit and retain the younger generation. And part of the thinking there is their expectations about information and insight are a lot higher than I think some of us older folks in terms of what should be made available to them, what should be available, and the need to put it in an intuitive way. Yes, that they could work with, but with the technology they've grown up with, they have some expectations on how it should be delivered and what should be available. And so that's part of the thinking process behind recruiting and retaining a younger generation for manufacturing.
Okay, thanks. Just one contrarian point of view. I've heard some of my colleagues in the industry discussing recently, the boomer side of the story, saying, well, wait a minute, there's a lot of technology that's coming to the fore right now that we can use. We want to do it fast while we're still around. So that's another driver, I think, for some of this stuff.
Catch up or die.
So we talked in this session and in some other sessions about sort of this notion of keeping track of your products when they're in service in the field. So we've got a question here. What are some of the challenges in leveraging data from products like that are in service out there for things like quality or loss reduction and things like that? Anybody want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I can comment on that. I've actually had a lot of personal experience in that area as well, working for a company, not just as a consultant. I had worked for IBM Business Consulting Services for some time, so I do have a bit of a tech background, but then joined Navistar, which some of you know is better known as International Truck and Engine, to help them launch a telematics solution. And so the concept there was to build a new business, but what was clear out of that as well, which, wireless vehicle tracking and diagnostics, and real-time reporting on that information. But what was clear through the process of developing that product and launching it in the market and all the information that came with it is there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to reduce costs, both in terms of quality, because you're getting real-time diagnostic information at the dealership, and in the way this solution was architected, it was software as a service, which back in 2004 was actually kind of innovated, but also to reduce warranty costs. And I know there are automotive manufacturers out there looking at that as well, some taking action on it, some not, but really scouring that data that they have on product in the marketplace, because it's equipped with sensors and it's their onboard computers monitoring diagnostic information can report that in real time, as well as integrating that with dealer data and product data. Really take advantage of that information to improve production or to understand if there's a design flaw at work. So that's a trend that we see growing even further. I had the privilege of working with GE Aviation as they went to launch their new prognostic solution, which is now known is Teleris. It's a joint venture between GE Aviation and Accenture. But they're using that information as well for product design and product information, and is in addition to it being its own commercial service to commercial airlines.
Okay, thanks. Questions from the audience?
You talked about the challenges of the getting all this data together, and I think what has really changed the landscape over the last 6-8 years possibly is that a lot of the infrastructure has become standardized. It's come into place. Connectivity is much easier with the 3G networks, 4G networks, LTE, and even in the industry like automotive, this was the last piece which ever used to get touched in the service station. But now over-the-air updates, which are so common for our applications, are becoming commonplace in the industry. So I think what's really happening is that the consumerization of IT is bringing up standards, infrastructures, which are being leveraged by these kind of initiatives to really drive down the cost of implementation and bringing it all together much faster. All the benefits of doing it are there, but the challenges of bringing it together are coming down because of standardization.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to add one thing. We've talked a lot about the capabilities to connect our data, and how that's getting easier as technology is advanced. What I haven't heard a lot about is people trusting their data. So the ugly secret of data validation and validated processes or sensor capabilities and whatnot. And so, like I said in my presentation, I can collect 50 million data points a day. But if you ask me how many of them are spot on accurate, it's going to be less than that, right? And so now if I now have business processes that kick off, and all of a sudden now I'm ordering materials, I'm integrating my supply chain, I'm doing all this kind of stuff, and the data that I have is not trustworthy, I can do a lot of bad things really fast. So the Internet of Things allows bad things to happen fast, and I don't see a lot of energy and a lot of people talking about the integrity and the trustworthiness of the raw data that they have, because that's where everything starts.
There was a comment in one of the earlier sessions about KPIs that I thought was pretty good, about how, you've got your data that you collect, and you live and breathe it and you believe it, but also have another point of data that you collect that you can use to validate that information. It may be, later in time, such example as sales information that you're using to validate production. But that's a very important point. We ran into problems sometimes. I can say this now, I'm no longer working at Navistar, but we would report information from the engine about fuel economy or fault codes, and the customers would just not believe it. If there was one issue there that didn't make sense, and it threw out, they would just throw out all the information if there was one problem with the data. And so that there's a lot of trust building that you have to do, and validating to believe, and to make people believe that they can take action on that data.
Okay,
Just,
thanks, Paul.
just one quick point to that.
Okay.
I just hired a fellow that works for me out of India, and he just recently came from Amazon. And so on the onboarding process, he wanted to understand our infrastructure and our data set and whatnot. And so he asked me point blank, he says, show me the department that you have for data integrity. And I said, we don't have one of those. He says, well, at Amazon we do. We've got hundreds of people that do nothing to make sure that all the data is right. Because at the point of purchase, when you're on the website, being in stock, not out of stock, having the right size, that's kind of what they do. It's what matters. And so it was interesting to just kind of have that right in your face when he asks you, where's your data integrity department?
I think the biggest example of that is probably Google Maps. They have a huge set of people who are doing corrections to the map data.
Okay. So we have one question from the audience stacked up here, so let's see if we can get to that while we've got a little time left.
Yeah, John Harrington from Kepler Technologies. A lot of the business press and advertisements about M2M and IoT talk about peer-to-peer connectivity between your Google Glasses directly to a piece of equipment on your plant floor. Some of the discussions from Dow seem to say we're going we're going to have some tools that are going to regulate that. And I wanted to get some of the feedback from the panelists as to, do they really envision peer-to-peer tablet connecting directly to a piece of equipment, or do you envision more what I would consider manufacturing, where we're going to have some sort of controls, we're going to have some systems that control that data to broker it so that you're not able to take down the whole show just by walking through or allowing the wrong person access. So.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that it's extremely important in terms of the security and the segregation of the network and the layers that makes up the level 2 network especially, and then within the MOM layers as well. There truly is a vision here that they want to see things happening through a service architecture. It does allow mobility. You saw the portable electronic devices on the picture. It allows them to allows the operator to actually go to an equipment, and it's not a mobile solution. So untethered, you go collect the data, come back, tether it, put it up there. In the packaging center that I described, is where the true mobility is required. But it's again looking for the trusted device to go talk to an equipment that is in the field. So it's not quite open. Point to point is questioned as well, because the fact that it's difficult to manage if you just kind of let it go and have a lot of interfaces in the environment.
I think we're where you are as well, and what Andy said earlier this morning around alliance partners, preferred partners, some sort of a business model like that. It's not going to be, this capability is open to everyone. That would just be a mess.
I think you have to look at it as a kind of an expansion of the point of sale system that's going to use near-field communication to be able to make any kind of financial transaction you want to make. A similar type of architecture will exist in the not too distant future, maybe 18, 24 months, where a manufacturing plant, you'll have people with rugged devices that NFC, and then based on PIN identification, they can go up and access certain functionality on a piece of equipment to either maintain it or pull information off of it. It's going to be no different than allowing them into a Maximo or an SAP system to allow them to use their credentials to log in. It's just there will be a secure network element to it, and there are different ways that the carriers are building secure elements into our network so that either based on your handset credentials or based on PIN codes or based on a point of sale model, you're allowed to access the functionality and do resets and set point changes and things like that. I mean, it's coming. It's in fact, it's already here in a lot of laboratories.
Okay, I think that's going to have to be the last word because we're a little over on our time. Everyone, let's thank our panel and our speakers today for a fine job.